Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and it's full review time on the Demko AD20.5s. The AD20.5 is a scaled down, slimmer, smaller production version of the Demko AD20, which I have and love. So let's start off by, first of all, I need to say thanks again to the Demko brothers, John specifically, who I've been communicating with over there, because when I reached out to them about reviewing one of these, he sent me both of them, and I sincerely appreciate it because I've been thoroughly enjoying them and super excited to do this and to talk about these and just to check them out selfishly. These are incredibly exciting for me, and that hasn't worn off. So yeah, a big thanks to the Demkos. I will link down below to Demko Knives in every way that I can conceivably link to them, their site, their Instagrams, their YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So look for that down below. All right, so I have had the AD20 for a while now, probably 6 months plus. I don't know exactly when I got it, but this one is the CPM 3V blade steel G10 handle scales, and this is an MG AD20, which means it's a machine ground version of the knife. They also do some hand ground ones, which are much more expensive, but these retail when you can find them in stock for like $425, $450-ish in the G10. A little bit more if you do titanium and less if you do plastic like these. I adore this knife. This knife was up there in the running for 2020 Knife of the Year for me. It's my favorite overbuilt tank of a knife that I own. There are a couple of things about this knife that are fantastic, but the biggest one is the shark lock. If I'm being honest, if this knife was a backlock, I would never have even tried it. If I did try it, I can't imagine I would love it. I don't like backlocks, right? If it was a liner lock or a frame lock, I'd probably like it a lot because it's a really, really good knife, but it wouldn't feel groundbreaking to me like it does. What really makes this knife sing is the shark lock. So the shark lock is this bar back here, which you pull on, and boom. It's super fun to fidget with. It's super reliable on lockup. It's incredibly strong. I have been mean to this knife. I've batoned with it. I've chopped with it. I've done all kinds of stuff with it that you typically shouldn't do with a folder, and it eats it up, and it's going incredibly strong. So this knife is remarkable. These, like I said, are smaller, thinner, production, scaled down versions of that knife, and they still have the shark lock. That is, again, what makes this platform feel special to me. So on these production ones, you get two blade shape options. There's the clip point, which looks just like that knife I just held up. This is basically a scaled down version of that knife. And then you have this blade shape, which is called the shark foot, kind of a warning sheep's foot type of thing going on. And I love both. We're going to talk about both, but I'm probably just going to hold up one at a time to talk about them because holding two knives is a little difficult. So yeah, let's go through my typical review stuff. I'm going to talk ergos, carry, cutting, and action on these knives. And let's start by saying, to reiterate, this is a production variant. And I'm excited that Demko Knives is playing this game now because they previously, at Demko Knives, only made knives like this, right? Like several $100s at least. And they are made with very nice materials most of the time, but they're very difficult to get because they can't make as many as people want, and they're going to continue to make those. Don't get me wrong. They're not going to stop. That's baggy stuff next to me. They're not going to stop making the knives in-house, but by adding a production line, I think it's a really good way to get this lock type into people's hands, get their designs into people's hands, and there have been a couple production variants of their knives in the past through Cold Steel, but it's not that way anymore. These are Demko production knives. So there's no Cold Steel on here. It's not marked Cold Steel anywhere. It's not coming in a Cold Steel box. This is coming in a Demko box, and it says Demko on it. I love that. They're having these made in Taiwan, I assume, based on the way they feel and the connections that I assume they have, that they're probably using the same factory that Cold Steel uses over there, but they're doing it themselves, and I like that. So let's jump in on it. Let's start with Ergos. I'm probably going to be a little all over the place just because I have so many thoughts about these knives, but ergonomically, let's begin there. This handle is awesome. It's the same profile but scaled down as the big brother, and for my hands, it is perfect. I just get a phenomenal grip on here. I love that my hand is kind of captive back here and up here. I've got a little bit of a guard on both sides to keep me locked in. The texture that's on this plastic honestly feels really, really good. It's the same texture pattern that they're putting on the G10 of the ones coming out of their shop. Yeah, the size and scope of this handle just feels really, really good. It's much thinner, much, much, much thinner than the big brother. Let me show thickness comparison here. If you look at these handles, it's night and day. And I like thin. I don't know. It's a balance, right? Because if you go too thin, it can ruin Ergos. This doesn't. This is thin enough that it feels slim in hand, but it still feels locked in, and it doesn't feel dainty. It doesn't feel like there's not enough knife there. I get a really, really good purchase on it. I tend to put my thumb up here in a saber grip. It's very comfortable. You've got a big stretch of jimping right up there, and I like that because I can also choke up on this section right here. Again, just like on the bigger one, you've got that same spot, and with the jimping extending so far forward, I can still get that jimping all the way up here, and I like that. I get a really controlled sensation over the blade when I use that. Let's talk about the jimping for a second, too. I am a jimping snob. I tend to sometimes hate jimping. I really, it can be a quick way to ruin a knife for me by putting overly aggressive jimping on it. It bothers me. This jimping is not overly aggressive. It's just the right level of traction without feeling like it's chopping or trying to chop my finger off. I like that. It just feels good, nice and grippy. I dig it. Another thing worth mentioning, let me switch so that I'm showing both of these. The shark lock itself. When I first got the AD20, one of my worries was, am I going to inadvertently like pull down on that while I'm using the knife? The answer is I never have. On these little ones or on the big one, it's never been a thing. You can also, if you're getting like kind of an aggressive, very pointed saber grip, you can use it as a thumb ramp. And those are jimped a little bit as well. So it's a very comfortable spot to land all the way back here if you're trying to get a lot of reach with the knife. So I like that jimping adds to the ergos rather than detracting from them. And again, it's not really a thing where I found myself like disengaging the lock while using it. It's never occurred for me. So yeah, ergos are super comfortable. Hammer grip, saber grip, love them both. You can choke up, still super comfortable. Reverse grip, very comfortable. I love the reverse grip on these knives. Draw cut, comfortable. Reverse grip draw cut, still pretty comfortable actually, which is kind of crazy. So very comfortable ergos. I dig these knives in hand. Next, let's talk carry. These have the same style pocket clip that the big one does. I don't know if the big one would fit on it. I don't think it would. The hardware size at least is different, but it's the same type of pocket clip, right? Like if you look at the big brother next to it, it's the same clip. I find these clips are very functional. I find that they feel fine in hand. I wish that it was deep carry. I tried on the big one a custom deep carry clip at one point. The design of that clip was not for me. It ruined the ergos for the palm of my hand enough that I'd prefer to not have the knife deep carry. And I'm usually super like team deep carry. I would love to see a good deep carry clip come for these that works for me, but in the meantime, these clips totally function just fine. This knife is pretty light. It's not overly heavy at all. It's not like a featherweight either. It does have full liners in here. There's a little bit of internal milling on them, but it's full liners. So it's not a featherweight, but it's slim, it's light, and the pocket clip just works. I've carried these honestly more as secondaries than I have as a primary, which is interesting because this knife is not small. These are not tiny little guys. This absolutely could be a primary, and it has for me plenty of times as well. But most of the time that I've tossed one of these in pocket, also partially because I've been carrying a lot of really big knives lately, these have been back left pocket, riding as a secondary, and they've been great in that way. So I like carrying them. The slimness is probably the biggest factor that's made them so comfortable for me. That's the biggest thing. For me in pocket, the biggest indicator of whether a knife is going to be really comfortable or not is whether it's thin or whether it's thick. So yeah, these feel great. All right, let's talk action. So just like the big guy, you have a hole and you have studs. So with those, you can middle finger flick from the hole. You can middle finger flick from the stud, which I have a little bit of a harder time with, but you can do it. There we go. You can thumb flick with the stud. Oh my gosh, I'm doing this so weird for the camera. You can thumb flick with the stud, and you can kind of slow roll with the hole. That doesn't work super well for me. I guess you could probably thumb flick with the hole. Yeah, you can. So deployment options, right? For me, the most important one, the one that I focus on is, oh, I just touched the stud with my finger. The most important one, this is so, how do I hold this so you can see it and I can do it reliably? Middle finger flicking works really, really well on these. Better when you're not doing it for a camera, but I love middle finger flicking the big Demko. I also love it on this. The biggest difference is this blade stock is way thinner and it's smaller in general, so there's not as much heft to the blade. They feel honestly the same otherwise. Like the way that this knife rides, it's very smooth. The way that the shark lock actuates feels very much the same. It's just the difference in blade weight that makes them feel different to me. But yeah, if you've felt the action on one of the bigger ones, it's going to feel like the same, but with a smaller, lighter blade. And the deployment options are still the same, at least on mine, because I have the hole or the slot on the big one. Some people have just studs on the MG AD20s, but anyway, I like the action. I find that it's super fun. It's also super different. It feels kind of Axis lock-esque, but doesn't actually work like an Axis lock, and they just have like a very mechanical sensation. Just like the big one, these feel the most kind of like firearm-like. The sounds that they make, the way you pull on the lever, and like it feels kind of gun-like, the way that they interact with your hands. I don't know. And I think they also like, especially the big one, like the oil they use, this too, they smell kind of like they use like firearm oil or something. I don't know. It has like this inherent kind of gun-like quality to it. So yeah, action's good. It's a lot of fun. It's different and it works. Let's talk, we've done carry, action, ergos. Let's talk cutting performance. So starting with the shark foot, I love this blade. I dig Wharncliffe type blades in general, and this just works super, super well for me. The edge that came on it is very sharp, just a sticky sharp edge. They're using AUS 10A on here, which I talked about in my first impressions. It would not be the steel I would pick for these knives. It wouldn't be the steel I'd pick for any knife, frankly. But they're coming in at about $150. Plastic and AUS 10A does not excite me. I would love for it to be an enhanced blade steel, especially in 2021. I feel like it's just dated, to say the least. But as I've used it, they seem to have treated it quite well. It's done well for me. It's held its edge all right. And on each of them, they've been fine. Again, if these were 20 CV, I'd be a lot more... I'd sound a lot more positive about it because I'd feel a lot more excited about it. But anyway, the blade shape itself is very user-friendly. I dig this blade shape because it puts the tip all the way down here instead of up here. If you look at the difference of where these tips are, you'll notice that between these two blade shapes, for me, the biggest difference in functionality is if I'm cutting through something on a flat surface, like I want to cut through tape across the top of a box or something. With this one, if I tilt to here, the tip is in the thing I want to cut, right? It's very easy to draw through things. With this blade shape, if I want to cut with the tip, I need to pivot it to like down here to get that same amount of like tip interaction with the surface. That's definitely what she said. They're different though. So this clip point, I think, for a lot of people is going to be the more usable blade shape. You've got a good amount of belly right here, which helps in a lot of types of cutting. You do have some flat here, and then you've got what is probably a stronger tip, the way that it's done up here. Whereas on this one, That tip is going to get a little bit more dainty. It's still not a very dainty tip, but there's just less meat behind it because you're down in the grind where that tip is at. And I don't know, there's not really any belly, although the whole thing is a little bit of a gradual belly. It's not just a perfectly flat surface. I don't know. To me, it depends on what I'm doing. Like for outdoor type use, I prefer a blade like this. For indoor type use, opening boxes and stuff all day long, I prefer a blade like this. There are options for a reason. I think people are going to just choose whichever one will suit them better, or maybe whichever one they think looks better. I don't know, but I like both. I have found that because they've got much thinner blade stock than the big boys do, they work quite well for like actual EDC type cutting. Man, that's not focusing. There we go. The blade stock is great. The grinds are done well. I like that they're brought up decently high. They go up about to the hole, and then it's not thin behind the edge. I'd be lying if I was like, this is a thin, slicey little knife. It could definitely stand to be a little bit thinner, but the flat grind, the way that it's done, it's worked well, and the edge that's on them, again, from factory is like sticky sharp, really, really good. And so they've done well in all the cutting that I've done, which has basically been a lot of boxes, a couple of zip ties I've made sure I did with them, put them through a little bit of paracord. I've cut an apple with each of them, and then a lot of processing cardboard for the dumpster. And they've done well. As secondary knives go especially, which, again, they're kind of pushing the limits of what most people would consider a secondary. They've been very capable, because this handle is full size for me, and it's a good size blade, and I get good control over them. It all kind of flows together. The ergos and the cutting, it works. So yeah, honestly, I've been really, really impressed with these. I think the story of these knives is basically going to be, this is an entry point shark lock. If you want a shark lock, but you don't want to spend $350 plus, these are $150. And they have a little bit of an underwhelming blade steel. They're plastic on the scales, but the plastic feels really good. It's done quite well. I haven't had any issues with it. It doesn't flex or anything. Like, functionally, they came out really, really nice. And the action feels true to what a Demko shark lock should feel like. And the ergos are great. They carry well. Like, there's a lot that's good happening here. And you're getting a shark lock. You're getting a Demko design, and you're getting the first Demko production knife ever if you get one of these. So the value is a subjective thing, but honestly, like, I wouldn't have any issue paying $150 for one of these. I think they're worth it at that price point to me, to get this design and to have it function as well as it does, and to have it be a Demko. So, I don't know. Yeah, these should be available at Blade Show. I don't know how many they'll have. I imagine they'll probably sell out, knowing how many people are interested in these. That's outside of my ballpark. I don't know what that's going to be like at Blade. I unfortunately won't be at Blade Show. I wish I was, but good luck to those of you who are trying to snag one there, or if you're watching this in the future and there's drops of these happening, or however it ends up going, best of luck to you. I think these are sweet, and I definitely liked them. I have enjoyed having them around. So, thanks guys. I'll see you on the next one.